So I talk about the Giants for a living. So I want to start with you. Like, what do you, as an outside perspective, what are you seeing with the Giants?
I covered Michael Conforto for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
If that guy is okay, like if he's right, and shoulders are tricky and all this stuff, and he's had that for a while. But if he's right, dang, he can hit. He can hit. Like he could. That's a huge wild card. I feel like for the San Francisco Giants is if Michael Conforto is anything close to what he had been. That's a really nice addition. Really nice addition. Obviously, there's risk reward there, all that stuff. We know what the history's been. It's been a rough go. But I always felt like he was an advanced hitter. And I think that could serve him well, changing teams, seeing, I think, he's been hurt and all that, but he knows his swing so well. He's a good baseball player. And if there's someone who could figure it out after going through what he's gone through, it's Michael Conforto. That could be a huge add. Logan Webb, we were just talking about the Diamondbacks. If you got someone that's going to be the guy, you never write those teams off. What I'm worried about looking at the Giants is Carlos Rodon is pretty doggone good for them.
Yeah.
So what's after Logan Webb right now, right? And so like that we got, Stripling. They added Sean Manaea, like that. There's some names there, but like that's still a big time question mark. Are they going to cover enough ground defensively, right? Because I think the staff is like a lot more contact oriented now that they've changed over. Speaking of not having Rodon anymore, the ball's going to be in play more.
Yeah.
So again, do they have the roster where, they're never, I think, the way they're built, ever going to be like great defensively. But what you wonder is like, are they going to play clean ball, or at least make the plays they need to make, and to make up for the fact they're not going to be the rangiest club, right? And are they going to hit enough? Because like that's the trade-off, isn't it? That they're constantly trying to hit more, right? And at the expense of, they're okay with the trade-off is the point.
Right.
So that's from an outsider's view. I think it's an interesting team. All right. And there's going to be a lot of attention paid to the players they don't have. Right. I know that. And like, that's totally fair. But, I was reading something that Baggerly wrote about them semi recently. And, if you look at how they're trying to win now, like it's not that much different than they tried a couple of years ago.
Right.
It worked out pretty damn well.
Right.
So, and then this is another thing. If you look at the top three teams in this division, I think the Dodgers and Giants in particular, there's some young players that are going to come into play here. Like if they're going to do what they're going to do or want to do, some kids are going to have to step up.
Right.
So, and I think the Giants certainly have some intriguing players there. So from the outside, right, I think they're going to get hammered for the offseason, and it's very easy to do that. That said, you look at the names on this roster, there's good major league players here. They got a staff ace. They got some dudes who can hit. They've got their warts, but I'm not looking at the Giants as like a lost cause or whatever. I think they could be real interesting in this division.
I feel like fans, especially Giants fans, talk about them as if they weren't 81-81 last year, because to go from 81-81, to go from 500 to 90-72 is not that onerous. Like teams can do that year to year just by virtue of, hey, wow, this guy's better than I thought. So I do want to point that out. I will say, if you showed me that roster, the current roster, you go back to the start of the offseason, you hand me this roster, and you say, this is the Giants heading into spring training. What do you think? I'll say, okay, they could have used a star. I'm assuming that Judge re-signed with the Yankees. I'm assuming that they tried for other stars and couldn't get them. Okay, that happens. Free agency is not like Costco. You don't just go in and pick a 6-pack of stars up. Like, so you're looking down. Okay, well, Jock Peterson with the qualifying offer. Okay, maybe they're optimistic that he'll thrive under the no-shift rules. You got Conforto. That's a good buy low, high ceiling guy. Okay, JD Davis is back. Great. Mitch Haniger, that's another high ceiling guy, buy low. Stripling, Manaea. Yeah, Taylor Rogers to get literal twins in the bullpen. Yeah, you know what? This isn't bad. This isn't bad. Like, that's not bad considering the circumstances. But the Giants had Aaron Judge for 7 minutes, and they had Carlos Correa for a week, right? You have 7 minutes between John Heyman's tweet of Arson Judge and then the sort of like, actually, I'm hearing different things. So there's 7 minutes where the Giants fans are just like, boom, their brains are exploding. But then there's a week of Correa, and that just, you can't come back from that offseason. That is just, do you know the goat, the just one goat joke?
No.
I'm not going to tell it here, but it's Paul McCartney does a version of this joke. So search Paul McCartney just one goat joke, right? And it's sort of like that, where that's all you're going to be known for, is just, like you can do a lot of things and they all might make sense, but you screw up some of the big names, and that's what your offseason are remembered for. But I'm cautiously optimistic about their chances. I think we're going to get into the Dodgers and Padres, and we know why they're favored to be 1-2 in some permutation. But the Giants, the biggest asset for me this offseason, and I talked about this with Bags on our podcast yesterday, the biggest change for me is that this front office and this coaching staff is allowed to communicate with these players in the offseason. They can go to Alex Cobb and they can say, listen, your fastball splitter was devastating last year, but here's what we think you can do in this quadrant. And Cobb is smart enough to go like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Last season, they couldn't do that. Last offseason, because of the lockout, they couldn't talk to the players who were hurt. They couldn't talk to Brandon Belt and be like, hey, how you feeling? Maybe we could work on this. Oh, that's a little tight. Oh, here's something that can help with that. They couldn't do that. They couldn't do that. And not only could they not do that with Belt and Crawford and all those players, but the Mets couldn't do it with Conforto, right? The Mariners couldn't do it with Haniger. None of these teams could talk to their players and help them be healthy, help them be the best versions of themselves. Bags was talking about J.D. Davis. His hand was screwed up all year until the end. And he says, it changed my swing. It wasn't natural. It's why I had like this weird combination of high exit velocity, but I kept missing strikes in the zone. Like, it's going to be different in a lot of ways for everyone. I'm not just saying the Giants, but the teams that are good at getting information, getting data sets to their players, and have players who are receptive to that kind of coaching. I think they'll be improved. So I'm looking for teams like the Rays, looking for teams like the Giants, teams that are just like information hungry and generally good at distilling it. It's going to be different. We're talking about rule changes, but the no lockout thing's a big deal too. Man,
that's a great point, especially when, right, the running joke with the Giants is that their coach to player ratio is like 1-to-1, right? Like
right.
They got more coaches than anybody. But certainly the reason that happens is that as an organization, they obviously understand the importance of touch points with their players. They obviously understand the importance of having coaches that can develop relationships, communicate the way you're talking about. And so, yeah, every club in baseball went through that, same restrictions. But you could make the argument that none were hurt more than the Giants, given the resources that they've devoted toward that. And I think they have, like, all I've seen is how good they are about it. That's all I've heard. So certainly they probably felt it a bit more. So that's a great point by you guys, that having that communication open for the entire off season, probably a big deal for a club that obviously values it a lot.
Now, now that I've said that the Giants aren't going to be that bad, and they might actually be kind of good, we're still looking at a National League that has the Braves, the Mets, Phillies, Cardinals, Brewers, Dodgers, Padres, and I'll throw the Diamondbacks in there. So you have 8 teams ahead with them in that at least wild card chase. Some of them are obviously going to win the division. Can they be better than 3 of those teams, 4 of those teams? I was told there's no math, but can they make the wild card? Can they be better than like the Phillies, right? Can they be better than the Brewers? That's going to be the question, because it's not chasing the Dodgers, I don't feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing a repeat of 2021. That's a beautiful butterfly, and it's not coming back. Can you see them being better than the Phillies or the Brewers?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I can. More so the Brewers and the Phillies, I would say. But yeah, I think totally could see them being in the mix. And that's because, you've got some players here where, if they hit their upside, they come back from injury or whatever, like they just look more like what they have been, then yeah, you could totally see it. Moves to improve the bullpen, right? Getting the other Rogers brother in there, I think has a domino effect, and you're going to see that as the season goes along. You talked about Doval earlier. That's obviously a huge benefit to him. It takes a little bit of heat from there. So yeah, I mean, I think I can totally see that. Yeah, I think, and that isn't that what this is designed to be, by the way, Grant. Right, like that you set up the playoffs this way, you expand the playoffs this way, so that clubs exactly in the position of the San Francisco Giants can be within arm's reach of getting into the dance. So like it or not, right? I think we've talked about this. Like you can say that it cheapens a playoff berth and all this stuff. But look, the league wanted more teams involved. They got it, right? And so that's the system we're in, and I think the Giants can certainly be one of those clubs.